Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this special event with the incredibly talented actor and author, John Cho. I'm your host for today. I'm George Malukran, and I'll be taking you through an insightful conversation with John, as well as sharing some video questions that we've received from his fans, including you. Before we get started, though, I want to invite you all to share where you're tuning in from. Send us your questions in chat as well as your comments because our friends at Little Brown Young Readers will respond. And everyone watching, have your cameras ready because we have a chance to take a selfie with our special guest, John Cho. So sit back, relax, and let the countdown begin. All right, are we ready to get started? Before we jump into our interview today, let me give you a brief introduction of our guest of honor. Today with us, we have the incredible John Cho, who I'm a huge fan of. John is a well-known actor who's appeared in numerous movies and TV series like Cowboy Bebop, Wish Dragon, Over the Moon, Star Trek Beyond, and many, many more. He is also an accomplished author with his latest book, Troublemaker, receiving rave reviews from readers and critics alike, including myself. We're thrilled to have John here with us today to talk about his book, his career, and everything in between. Please help me give him a warm welcome and a holler for our special guest, John Cho. How's it going, John?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really
Thanks so much
excited.
for being here. Sorry, yeah, I know it's so great to be able to chat with you about everything that's happening right now. We have a lot of fans here today. We have classrooms, teens, fans from New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, Minnesota, let me catch my breath, England, Wales, France, Florida, Louisiana, and many, many more. Thanks to everyone tuning in right now.
Oh, I'm
John,
so
go
excited
ahead.
to talk to kids about the book because of the pandemic. When the book came out, I really didn't get a chance to talk to kids about it. I was talking to journalists, but this is really special for me. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we're so pleased and honored to be able to have this time with you to talk about the book. And hopefully we can be some more fun than journalists, but like we'll bring the energy, I swear. But John, I know your career in acting is something that we all want to hear about. I know myself and back in college with my buddy JJ and then Sean, who's my coworker, talking about just watching all the flicks you had, and that got us through like those times of like late night studying or just like needed a laugh.
Oh.
But I know that I would love to start there because of all the roles you played, like Sulu, Harold, Spike Spiegel, Long the Dragon. Love to ask, is there a particular moment on set that stands out in your career as a highlight?
Well, if I was to pick one, I guess it might be the first time I stepped onto the set of the Star Trek Enterprise. And it was so beautiful and so complete and so huge. And it just made me feel like a kid. It was like being at the most elaborate Disneyland ride, and it brought me back to being 10 years old, playing with my younger brother and pretending we were on a spaceship. And so that was pretty spectacular, and that remains one of the best sets I've ever seen. It was very deep, so that once you exited the bridge, there were all these hallways that went on forever. So it just didn't seem like a set. It just seemed like a spaceship.
That's so cool. It's like you're, like not to be ironic, but teleported into like this, world that's like basically built for it. And like, I love that too, that you have that similar feeling that a lot of fans do that like Star Trek, that like kind of say that's a monumental feeling. Like it's so cool. And it just like kind of takes you over. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Viewers also that um, uh, the Enterprise, started as a television show in the '60s, so it was one that I'd grown up seeing. So it was really special to be on not just a spaceship that looked amazing, but one that I'd watched growing up.
Yeah, like the spaceship.
The spaceship.
Very cool. Well, from actor to author, tell us what made you want to write this amazing book, Troublemaker.
Um, I think it was really kind of a gift for my younger self. when I was the age of the character in the book, Jordan, the main character, we were moving around a lot. And, um, so I was a new kid in school all the time. And as soon as it felt like as soon as I made a friend, then we were moving again. And for me, books were my friends. They were my solace. They were my safe place. And I was the kind of kid that, you know, walked everywhere with his book. I was told, don't read at the dinner table. Don't read when you're walking downstairs by my mother and stuff like that. So I sort of wanted to leave a book that the only issue at the time was that if I walked into a library, I rarely saw a book that featured a kid that looked like me, and so it was my dream to have a kid that looked like my younger self on the cover of a book that some other kid might discover at a library.
That's beautiful. And I love that. I think we're going to get into the book right now. And like, it's so timeless, right? Because books continue to kind of, pass on to decade. And like, the next kid that will be able to pick it up. But really happy that you decided to write a book and excited to dig into it now.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And so we have a lot of readers that have read the book and fans, and we've been gathering the questions from them. And we'll be sharing it throughout the show. And we actually have our first one ready to roll. So let's play that first video question.
Hi, I'm Milan Perez from New York. How do you believe your background in acting influenced your writing process?
I love that question from Milan. And it was a great way to kickstart this kind of like, deep dive. How do you believe your background in acting affected your writing process?
What was her name again?
Milan.
Milan, thanks for your question. That was a good one and very insightful. And I think that having been an actor for a long time, I think of stories in a visual way and in terms of action, because if you notice, movies are different from books in that usually you can't hear what the character is thinking in a movie. You have to see what they do to understand who they are. And so I think my book, even though it has a lot of Jordan's thoughts, it's filled with a lot of action, and that's probably influenced by me reading scripts more than books these days.
Now it makes total sense, like adding that additional commentary, right, to like really set the stage and the climate. And you can do that with books, and I think that really kind of like transgresses really nicely.
Yeah.
But let's dive in deeper to the book. The characters you mentioned in Troublemaker, about a boy named Jordan who goes on this mission to help his father during the LA riots in 1992. Can you tell us why you chose this story?
Forgive me, this is kind of a long story, but I'd wanted to write a book, but I was had a whole different idea for what I might write, and then so we had agreed to. I started working on ideas in 2019, and then 2020 rolled around, and so a bunch of things happened. If you guys remember, we had the pandemic. And my kids were at home all of a sudden, just like you guys did, and they were learning from remotely, and they were around the house all day. And the news on the television was very, very stressful. We didn't know what was going to happen with the country, with this disease. Also, we had the murder of George Floyd, and there were Black Lives Matter protests, and it just seemed like the country was in a very dangerous place. And on top of that, there was a lot of anti-Asian violence starting to happen at the time. So there were a lot of things, a lot of big dark clouds over our country. And because our kids were home all the time, we were trying to figure out ways to talk about it with them. And because I was trying to understand how these big adult problems might seem to a child, I started thinking about another event from my childhood and the 1992 LA riots or uprising. And I started to wonder what that event might have looked like to a young person. And because that event bore a lot of similarities to what was happening in 2020. And so it was kind of my way of working out my feelings, I think, for my kids and what I was feeling personally about the events of that year.
I love that. And like, it's right. There's like so many things that are happening, and to be able to take all that of those events and like what everyone's feeling and manifesting into this book is such a great like kind of article of that, and to be able to continue to learn from it and then get those shared experiences, because a lot of people were going through the similar things and then also being able to recollect it from a time before. So that's really powerful. With that, we have another video question, this time coming in from California. Let's roll that clip.
Hi, my name is Eric. I'm from California. What was your inspiration for making the character Jordan?
I love that, Eric. He just finished the book and you had a question already for me. So Eric is asking, what was the inspiration behind the character Jordan?
Eric, we're neighbors. I'm in California too. Thanks for the question. The inspiration behind Jordan was probably me and at that age, and sort of the things I was thinking about and my friends. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I mean, the title of the book is Troublemaker. Jordan is sort of figuring out who he's going to be, and I think at that age, I didn't feel like a perfect kid. It felt like I was screwing up a lot. And Jordan is coming to terms with that and trying to decide whether he's worthwhile, even if he's screwing up. And I think me and my friends felt that way, like we were not perfect and we were still trying to hold our heads up and find self-confidence. So Jordan is definitely a mixture of me and a bunch of my friends, some of whom I called for advice and recollections.
I love that. And it definitely does explore those themes of identity, belonging, and personal growth through the eyes of this like 12-year-old Jordan. And I'm curious, can you talk about the challenges of exploring these themes from such a unique perspective? I don't believe you're 12 years old, but I know you had to like kind of get back to like that lens of thinking about it, because it is like you're a unique audience.
Yes, I think the challenge of writing from a 12-year-old perspective was remembering a time when all those things you mentioned, one's identity, one's sense of belonging, all those things were in flux and not yet set in stone. And so it was a matter of trying to take myself back to that age before I had formed opinions about the world and my family, when I was still, still cooking in the oven. And so that took some meditation, took some reflecting, and it required some phone calls too, just to jog my memory. But it was just remembering that the world was still new for me, for the character, that I was still learning about where I lived and who I was and who my family was.
That's really cool. And it's funny too, because like, despite like, how malleable you were as like, a young person, it still was kind of an anchor to reflect on back now. So like through the meditation, through those phone calls, kind of reigniting those thoughts and like, feelings, is really cool.
Yeah.
And then also in the book, obviously family and community plays a pivotal role. Can you discuss their significance in the book?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. Jordan is at an age, as I was at that age, when I was trying to figure out what where my family and community fit in the rest of the world. Your family and your community are your entire world uh, for a number of years, and then you reach maybe 10 or 12 when you start realizing how other people see your family, how other people see your community, and you start getting a sense of the bigger world and the bigger ideas out there and your own unit's um, place in that wider world. So I think that's Jordan's journey in a lot of ways, is understanding where he fits into his own family and his own community, and where his family and his community fits into the wider world. I should say, for those of you who haven't read the book, that sounds boring, boring adult talk, but I think it is kind of an exciting night for him. So it's not just dull ideas like I
No,
presented.
I love it. I think I love the way you put it too. Like it's like, widening that aperture of like, who you are in your family, in your community, and then, just that's the kind of meta is like it's like the community to the world, the community to the bigger community, and all how we all have a kind of a part of that. And we're all kind of working with it, and it's all very unique.
I think in terms of 2020, also, it was my kids were really understanding. They're getting a crash course in the country they lived in and the world they lived in, because it was all these adult issues were kind of crashing in on them. So it was certainly mirroring what was going on inside my own family.
Yeah, and I think that actually transitions nicely. Like that's what's so great about the book. It's kind of a tool for like, educating, and like understanding like this moment or like the past. And I'm curious, like, how do you think it might help readers gain a better understanding of historical events as it portrays?
Well, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed reading about historical events through the eyes of a character. Um, I loved the book Johnny Tremaine, which is set during the Revolutionary War, and followed a boy through those events. I loved Little House on the Prairie, which was an autobiographical account of a pioneer family. I loved Fifth Chinese Daughter by Jade Snow Wong, which I want to say was during the mid 1800s in San Francisco and Chinatown, and following characters through historical events really brought things alive for me. So I hope this can do the same for kids. But the reverse is also true, which is to say, you can learn a lot about the present by exploring the past. And what's nice about the past is we sort of know how things began and ended. And so there's a kind of stability to exploring past events. So if you can think about a topic or an idea that is a present tense idea or topic and view it through the lens of the past, I think there is a comfort and to being able to use past events to explore present day events.
Man, you got my mind is all gnarly right now because that's so so cool to think about. Like the past has informed whatever happens in the present, and the present, like, like through that different like perspectives, is kind of mind blowing. And I love the way you like kind of curated that, like, with the book and how we can use that. All right, we have another video question, this time coming from across the pond. So again, thanks for everyone that's sharing these questions. They're incredible. Let's roll that clip.
Hi, I'm Keely from Wales. What was the biggest challenge you faced while writing your book?
I love it. Keely from Wales. Her question is, what was the biggest challenge you faced when writing Troublemaker?
Katie from Wales, what a great question. Thank you. My biggest challenge, there are a couple I can think of, so forgive me for throwing multiple challenges at you, but number one was probably, I wrote it with a co-author, Sarah Suk, who helped me mightily. And because of the pandemic, we were unable to work in person. And so we had to use the computer doing this, doing Zooms and phone calls and emails. And so that was tough. I prefer to work in person. So that was, and I happened to be in New Zealand working on Cowboy Bebop at the time. So she was in Vancouver. So it was a big time difference. It was dark for me, it was bright, it was morning for her, and the opposite. So that was tough. And then probably it was, as I alluded to earlier, just going into some tough memories, and dealing with some difficult topics that hopefully are entertaining, but some of them were unpleasant to remember as well. So it's rocky emotional territory.
I bet. No, I love it. Also, yeah, I don't know how you would figure out those time zones. We haven't figured that out yet. It's 2023. We still haven't figured it out. But that's really cool insight. And also to know, like, there are always going to be these challenges. Like a book doesn't just, appear or happen. Like it takes time to get there. And a part of that I'm curious about as well is, like, can you talk about the research process for the book and how you ensured its historical accuracy?
Yeah. There's a lot of accounts of the LA riots or uprising that were widely available. There are documentaries and plenty of stuff on the internet. But obviously I was an adult at the time, so I have my own memories. But we didn't rely on a lot of historical research because I was sort of intent on removing our character Jordan from a bunch of the events. And the reason that I wanted to do that was he was scared and paranoid in the book because of all the things he saw on television. And I objected even at the time to the way people were being shown on television and the way the protesters were being portrayed, and felt that a lot of the media coverage prior to the riots themselves were problematic and misinformed a lot of the public. And so I wanted to create a very, how would I phrase this? Discrete story in which he was driven by fear rather than actual events. And so it was a little bit divorced from a lot of the actual events. He doesn't encounter rioters. He doesn't wander into the fray. There are no fires in the book. It's really almost a figment of his imagination in a lot of ways. So having said that, the kind of research that I did want to do was talk to people who knew how it felt. I happened to be in college at the time at UC Berkeley, and so I wasn't in LA. And so we talked to some people who lived through it and who were in Los Angeles and sort of got firsthand accounts. And there was a man who worked, the person who was probably most helpful was a man named Richard Choi, who worked at a place called Radio Korea. And Radio Korea becomes a little bit of a character in the book. And before the internet, people relied, especially immigrants in the Koreatown area of Los Angeles, relied on this radio station for a lot of things. And they would call into this live radio station before Google, and they would just ask questions like, I need a lawyer. Who do I need? And they'd be like, where's a Korean grocery store near me? And all the questions that you would type into Google today, these Korean immigrants would just call this radio station and ask. And Radio Korea became sort of this central call center for Korean business people who were losing, whose businesses were being affected by the riots. So that was probably something new something factual and that I learned through interviews, and it becomes a little bit of a character in the book, but that's the most fascinating thing I learned. And as an epilogue, I ended up doing an interview at that radio station. It was probably one of the coolest things I've done for the book, to be able to talk to the people who actually ran that radio station.
Well, that's wild. That's like full circle too. Like I definitely see that from the book. It is kind of its own character. That's so interesting. And to circle back too to what you were saying, like, the actual events and how Jordan's the character kind of goes throughout it. It doesn't really touch those actual events, but there's such a sentiment and the climate of what's happening that creates that paranoia still, and it still affects people, even though they're not, in the heart of it. Maybe they hear about the things like, from people, word of mouth, the news, and just like, how people are scared. So I think that was depicted really, really well, and that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you're young. And you're learning about the world you live in, your city, your country. And so the information coming in can really affect how you think of the world. And so in the case of Jordan, I think the information that he was getting from television and newspapers, drove him to make a really, really bad decision. And, and if you read the book, you'll know what that really bad decision is. But it's, so we have to be critical of the information that we get.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, we have a final video question from another neighbor of yours in California. Let's roll it.
Hi, my name is Dean, and I'm from Southern California. As a well-known actor, how do you balance out your acting career with your passion for writing?
First off, Dean, you are awesome. Dean's question is, as a well-known actor, how do you balance your acting career with your passion for writing?
Dean, I like your style. I like the way you live. Your shirt, the background with the plant, is that a plumeria plant? That's it's just I stand in admiration of Dean. How do I balance my career? That's an age-old question, and I have not formulated a good answer. It's balance is always tough, but between the writing and the acting, it's not really an issue. It's just you put one foot forward and keep going. And the real balance issue is between work and family, and being a dad, which is my number one job, and balancing my number one job with my number two job, which is everything else. But you just try. You just try your best. And sometimes
I like that. Just try. You never know. Yeah. And like, I mean, you have so many skills that you can explore, and like, also that inspiration from your family too. From your number one is what influences and creates number two and number three. So
but
thanks,
my number
John.
one job, probably influenced the book, and so it all works itself out, Dean. Just keep wearing cool shirts and being confident and having your hair combed. That's half the battle.
Yeah, dude, if you could just send us 2 of those shirts, we'd love to just be a trio. That'll be the third venture. We'll do a little TV sitcom. All right, John, we have a ton more questions, and I could keep going forever. And I know it's almost time to let you go, but there's one more question, or rather request, I'd love to ask you. And this is my personal favorite moment in all of our Flip event shows. It's the selfie time. In? All right, cool. So everyone out there watching right now, gather from your screens. We will get a chance to take a selfie with John. So if you're in a beanbag, jump out of the beanbag. If you're in a classroom chair, jump out of it, gather to the screen. We're going to give them a few seconds, John, to get all settled, and then we'll bring it right back to you for that selfie. I got my selfie right here. I hope you got yours as well. And don't forget to share those selfies with us and John by tagging us on social.
Thanks, guys.
That was fun. Thanks, John. We always love that moment. That's our artifact to keep with us forever about you and the book Troublemaker. So that's just be really cool. Before we wrap up, are there any themes, last thoughts, messages in Troublemakers that you hope that readers will take away?
Good question. If I had to pick one, I think it would be Jordan, the central character. It can be argued that all his issues are really simple, which is that he's not telling his true feelings to the people he loves. And if there's one takeaway, I think it would be tell the people you love that you love them, and see what happens. Probably good stuff.
I love that. +1 to that. Thank you, John. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for inspiring all of us to follow our passions, to stay curious, and to continue learning. Your insights and experiences have been truly valuable, and we wish you all the best for your future endeavors, probably with Dean. But thank you again so much. Thank you.
Dean. Oh, my hair. All right. Thank you.
Appreciate the time. Wow. Just wow. The John Cho. I'm feeling inspired, and I'm sure you do too. And guess what? The learning and inspiration is never over. Your students can reflect on all that they learned today right on Flip. Just go to this link and let your students record their videos and express their ideas. And don't forget, you can add Troublemaker to your bookshelf. Go to aka.ms/Troublemaker for more information. And even though we're wrapping up for today, we have Flip events almost every week. Next week, we'll be learning about sea turtles. And then on June 8th, we'll be going underwater to celebrate World Oceans Day with California State Parks. And guess what? You can catch all of our events on demand too. Head on over to aka.ms/Flip events to find an upcoming or past event bringing you 30 minutes of joy into your classroom or at home anytime. That's it for today. I am your host, George Malukrin, and on behalf of Flip, Little Brown Young Readers, and our amazing guest, John Cho, Thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you next time.